Okay, so the recording started. So thank you so much for joining me. It's 6 p.m. here in the UK. I am Joanne Yeoh. I am an animal communicator, and I have been practicing animal communication well over kind of between 4 and 5 years, but obviously my journey to come to this point has been a lot longer. The reason why I wanted to do this webinar to kind of encourage you, to motivate you, to continue on with your journey, is that I'm very passionate about being very familiar with our own process when it comes to what it means to us, what animal communication means to us. So whether you're new to animal communication, whether you're just kind of interested, whether you're intrigued, whether you've become kind of curious about it, whether you're actually passionate, you're at that point, or you're actually ambitious, you're ambitious to want to take animal communication further. Now, whichever stage you are at, there is always the exploring that you need to do. And what are we actually exploring? Are you exploring what animal communication, what it is, how it works, what to do with it, and what you would like from it? Now, there are tons and tons and tons of information now. It's just so accessible to find out from other animal communicators, your peers, what animal communication is, how it works for them, what to do with it, how they work with it. And all of that is really, really valuable. However, one of the key things is for you to decide for yourself those 4 points. So although we might give a definition of animal communication, it's actually very important that you explore what animal communication is from your perspective, how animal communication works from your perspective, what you're going to do with it. Once you know about animal communication, once you've experienced being able to communicate with animals, what do you want to do with it? And what would you like from it for yourself? So that's where exploring comes in. And I like the word exploring because exploring means practice. And I know we all have a bit of a block with the word practice. And it's not just with animal communication. It was any new skill that we learn, anything that we have to, try out for the first time. We all hear that, that sensible, wise advice that we get, which is you need to practice in order to get better. And sometimes just I don't know about you, but for me, sometimes just hearing that word practice makes me go, oh God, I don't want to do that bit. I just want to do the fun bit. I just want to do the exciting bit. But I want to motivate you to know that practicing is fun. Practicing, if you set it up right for yourself, can be and will be the most exhilarating experience within your animal communication learning journey. Okay, so there are 3 important components to your journey as a learner. First component is you, what your process is, what your relationship is with your intuitive self. Have you thought about that before? That we actually need to cultivate a relationship with our intuitive self. And we need our intuition when it comes to animal communication. And also your relationship with the animals. What is that about? What do you want to do, for them? What's your intention to want to communicate with them? What are you expecting from them? So that's your second component. And then your third component is you, the animals, and other humans. Now, that's probably the trickiest part in my in the animal communication work, in terms of what I experience. I trust the animals implicitly. I trust the information that comes through to me, and I trust that they receive the information that I'm sending to them. You bring in another element, which is usually another human involvement, because they are, if you're communicating with pets, you have pet parents. So you also have that component to it. But that's a very important component, because we are looking at interspecies communication. We're not just communicating with the animals by ourselves, which can take place, off its own kind of backing. But when you want to actually benefit the animal and you need the human element of it, then yes, the third component is kind of having a relationship with ourselves, with the animal, and with the pet parent. Now, all of these components have one thing in common that you will need in order to motivate you, encourage you, and give you courage to practice, and that is support from others. So I say all this with the wonder and beauty of hindsight, with my own with my own journey to how I've come to be a professional full-time animal communicator, and what my own learning and my own practice journey has been. So let me tell you a little bit about kind of my story, not so much about how I discovered animal communication, but more about what I had to do, what I learned, what worked, what didn't work during my practice journey. How did I practice? What kind of form did that take? Was it easy? Was it not? How many practices did I do? And before I became confident, and yeah, so that's the kind of thing that I want to share with you in this webinar. And if you can relate to aspects of my story, then that would be great, because it will help you to also see the path that I had to take, and it's not always been smooth. And so yes, so for me, my animal communication kind of learning was totally accidental, in the sense that at the time, I haven't heard about animal communication at all, but at the time I was kind of studying towards getting a certification for an oracle card, to be an oracle card practitioner. And I belong to this group. It's called the Soul Coaching Oracle Card group, which is run by Denise Lin. And so we were just practicing card readings for each other. And somebody in the group, out of the blue, and there's never been a request like that before, put in a post to say, could someone communicate with their cat? And nobody actually responded to that post, but it caught my attention. And interestingly enough, one of the card layouts that we could study was actually a layout for a relationship with our animals. So, and I was intrigued by that. Card reading for animals? Oh, that's interesting, So anyway, I jumped at it. I offered, to do it as a part of my case study. Now, what I didn't realize was that the person who put that post was herself an animal communicator, or she practiced animal communication, perhaps not professionally, but she herself was very familiar with the practice of animal communication. And I didn't know anything about that. Anyway, she said to me, I'll send you a photo of my cat, and you can do your reading. So, but what that did, because I took that opportunity, it became that our path connected, and her name is Isabel. And it became the fact that when she received my card reading, so, because that's what I did. I didn't do a communication, but I did a card reading for the cat. She said that it held a lot of meaning and it was very useful. And then she started to tell me more about herself and her own experiences with regards to communicating with animals. And I also then found out that she had lots of animals. And so we kind of struck up this relationship whereby she kind of became my mentor without it being formal. But it was very key, because right at that very early stage, whereby, and I know you can all relate to this, where we feel very vulnerable when it comes to sharing intuitive information. When it's not scientific, when it's not something that's set, there's something that hasn't got a formula. There's a lot of vulnerability within us when we go, yeah, I'll give it a go. I'll see what comes through. And then to have the courage to put it in writing and then send it off to somebody, and then wondering, whether you've got it right or you've got it wrong, and what does it all mean. And really what Isabel did for me was she offered her help in a very flowing way. There was no agendas on her part. And at that point, I didn't look at my path to be an animal communicator. I was just intrigued. I was just so curious about the information that sometimes came through and sometimes didn't come through. And there was somebody extending her hand of help to say to me, if you want to, I can just lead you and guide you and see if there's anything I can do to help. And so for about 3 months, she would send me photographs of her animals, and I would just do what I thought I could do. Or I didn't have any rules. I didn't, have any I wasn't even at that stage studying animal communication. So in many ways, I was fresh and I was raw, so to speak, in terms of knowledge. But really that helped me because it meant I didn't have too many rules or guidelines about what I needed to do. And what Isabel did for me was every time I sent her something, she was so quick with her response. She will always make sure that I wasn't hanging around waiting to find out what I did. And she nurtured me. And she would say things like, oh, try this or try that. Or even more importantly, if there was something that she couldn't relate to, she would say so. But she didn't just say, oh, no, I can't relate to it. I haven't got a clue what that's about. She would actually then help me to explore what does that mean? Did it relate to her? Did the animal pick up something with her? Maybe I was picking up on the energy of another animal. Perhaps it was an animal in spirit. We had a lot of kind of chats by messenger, really. And then kind of unexpectedly, Isabel passed away. I didn't realize she was ill, and she passed away after about maybe 4 or 5 months of me, getting to know her. And I remember thinking, oh my goodness, that kind of shook me. However, just kind of keeping on the animal communication aspect, the practice, suddenly I thought, oh, I've just lost my mentor. I don't know who I can practice with, but she gave me such a good foundation that I have always carried that with me. And I know that kind of for Isabel's legacy, that's really what drives me to offer to you and to as many as the learners who want to have their hand held at a certain time of their learning journey. Obviously, I can't hold your hand forever, and she didn't hold my hand forever. So what happened was after that, when I no longer had Isabel's help, but I felt like I needed to honor this, I did then embark on an animal communication workshop. And then I became very kind of, I just had this sense of knowing that the animals needed me, because one of the things that Isabel used to repeatedly say to me, and I'm going to pass this on to you, is that whenever I doubted myself or whenever I thought, oh, I don't know if I'm going to be wanting to do this. Oh, this animal, I didn't get anything from it. I'm not sure. Those kind of thoughts that came into my mind, she'd say to me, animals need animal communicators. There are just not enough of us around. That is so true. And I don't mean you have to be a professional animal communicator. I'm just sharing with you that, there's just never enough, because when I speak to animals and I talk to them about You know, should I teach? Should I do webinars? You know, have I got enough, you know, things to share with you that's useful? And I always hear a chorus from the animals that say there are not enough animal communicators on this earth and they need us. So whenever you feel as if you think, oh, I don't know if I should be doing this, you know, just remember, animals need animal communicators. So having done the workshop, I thought, right, I'm nearly ready. I want to accumulate a number of case studies in order to give myself, and kind of, again, it's more for me to find out, can I do this in a way that helps and benefits animals? So I've kind of come past the point of thinking, can I do this? Because again, I think it's quite subtle. I'd like to think that all of you who are attending this webinar and those of you who are going to be watching the replay, you already know you can communicate with animals, because otherwise the interest isn't really going to be there. You know, so I'm a great believer in that if you're really interested in something, it means you can do it. But it's more about, what are you going to do with it? What do you want from it? And what you can do, how will it benefit the animals? So for me, that was part of my exploration. And the only way I'm going to find out is I've got to practice. Because how else am I going to know what the role of animal communication is going to play, you know, in my life? So one of the things I did was I joined various groups on Facebook, because I thought I need animals. And I would put posts out to say, if anybody wants to have their animals, you know, communicated with, you know, I'm a student, I'm a learner, you know, and in the early days, I wasn't so good with my boundaries. I didn't really know how to set things up very well. But I learned as I went along that it's so important to have the right environment for your practice. To know that the person, so this is the human element, that the person that you're going to be liaising with and forming a relationship with, when it comes to communicating with their animal, that they are honoring your journey, they are valuing your time, that they are supporting you. So that is absolutely key, because the reason why I believe that we are hesitant with putting ourselves forward and, in a way, making time to communicate with animals is because we all have the fear of either looking silly, or the things that we share are things that, you know, the person can't relate to. They might say to us, oh, that's, you know, I mean, our thoughts are always worse than the reality. But saying that, I'd like to impart to you the importance of the person who you're asking to practice, you know, with their animal. So yes, the focus may be that you want to practice on as many animals as possible to gain your confidence and to gain a level of efficiency and kind of your proficiency with the way that you can relay the communication. But check out the person. So that's my key tip. So that's kind of where how I did it. I went from having somebody who held my hand, who gave me such a good foundation, that who also instilled in me the importance of why animals need us, and that fueled me to then go out there and, in a way, just take the bull by the horns and going, right. And I set myself a set number of case studies that I was going to do. Now, at that point, I had still no agenda. It wasn't like I was going to say to myself, I have to do 50 case studies and then I'll be an animal communicator professionally. I knew I wanted to do it. I knew I had the passion for it. I knew it excited me. And yes, of course, it would be a fantastic dream if I could be an animal communicator full time and help animals. And, that would just be, I knew that it was something that I really felt excited about. But I did not put pressure on myself about the outcome. So it was more that my focus was about me, exploring my process. Because of all the books I've read and lots of videos that I've watched, some I could relate to. Some I thought, oh my God, I could never do that. Because I'd be like in awe of how they, showed their video or written about how the communications came to them. I used to believe that I wasn't a very visual person. I didn't receive intuitive, images easily. And so when I read about, how some animal communicators could have such clear imagery sent to them, I'm thinking, well, I can't do that. So, but my desire to help animals made me look at myself, my own process. And that's really the key. Look at your practice. Look at your curiosity, look at your desire, look at your passion for communicating with animals as your own process of finding out how it works for you and how it can benefit the animal. So if you keep that in mind, that can be more the goal than the goal of getting it right. And the goal of, if I get it right, then it must mean something. So, yeah, so I went out and I decided that I was going to do between 50 and 100 case studies. And I gave myself, well, I said to myself, being honest with myself, genuinely, if I'm going to get, say, 50% of the feedback out of my, say, 100 case studies, and it was kind of, hit and miss, then I'm thinking, then, yeah, but it came back that it was around kind of 90%, 95%. But this because I really, I just got myself on this, on this kind of momentum. And it's the momentum you want to keep up. And again, just kind of going back a bit, because Isabel gave me that feeling that somebody was, backing me all the way. I searched for people who would do that for me when I asked to communicate with their animals as a case study. Yes, along the way, there were some that never got back to me, and I had to learn to manage those feelings that came up for me, because I would just be like, oh my God, have they not written back to me because it was so bad, my communication? And then, you torture yourself with certain thoughts. But one thing I will say to you here, and I say to my students, is that when you've done one communication, don't wait for the feedback before you do the next one. Just keep going. And that's why you need the numbers. And the reason for that is because every animal is different. Every communication experience is unique and different. Yes, you will need feedback, but don't wait until you have feedback and then move on to the next one. Because the reason for that is, us human beings, we have such failings. If you get a communication and the feedback was fantastic, right? Now you would think, oh, yes, that was fantastic. I can do this. I want to move on to the next one. Guess what? We start to worry that the next one might not be as good as the last one. And you set yourself a block, okay? Or you get a feedback that's, person couldn't really resonate with it, and they couldn't really kind of help you to explore it. And you're going to go, so you're going to be reluctant to also communicate with the next one. So I would say to you, if you are curious about animal communication and you want to practice, just set a momentum, just keep going. Don't wait for the feedback, because the more animals you communicate with, the clearer it becomes for you. And again, it's back to you. It's your process. Don't compare it with anyone else. Take inspiration from others, learn from others, but say to yourself, this is my process. Some of the things I've learned from other animal communicators, some things I've read about, they may apply to my own process, but not all of it will. So the reason why practice is so important is because it's your own exploration. And the best advice someone has given me about just challenges in life or anything I want to learn is harness the energy of curiosity. So be curious. Be curious when you're sitting there on your own in this room with a photograph of an animal, feeling a bit like, oh, I don't know, is anything going to happen? You know, that's intuitive work. You cannot get away with that. So be curious of process, be curious as go, okay, I'm getting lots of information, but I don't really understand any of that. Be curious about that. What do I not understand? What is it that I don't understand in terms of what I just seen? Was it just a flash of light? Was it actually a blob and I don't understand it? But I'm going to be curious. I don't say to myself, I don't understand, and then I back off. Okay, so be curious. And that's one thing that's really helped me in my journey. So giving and receiving information with an animal, you know, depends again on your own process and where you're at with your learning journey. It really is very much about your relationship with your intuitive self. How do you feel about trusting your intuition? When you trust your intuition, animal communication is simple. And that is how it links up. So for me, sharing my kind of journey where I didn't really understand that, I just thought animal communication meant, I understand it's about telepathy. Of course it is, an exchange of information, you know, via the energetic lines, via the telepathic communication lines. But how do you tap into telepathy? You have to really be very clear about how you receive intuitive information. So the more intuitive you live, the more intuitively you live your life, then in a way, easier, I'm going to put that in quotation marks, easier it is to receive and give communication with animals. And that is after probably about 2 years of me embarking on the animal communication journey, because animals have really taught me to be very, very intuitive. Because when I'm coming into practice with the animal, when I'm thinking, right, I've got to set up a time to be with them, to focus on the photograph, to look at the questions, to relate to the human. Oh, hang on a minute. I must also make sure my environment is peaceful and calm. Oh, I must do a meditation. Oh, just before I do the communication. Now, all of that is absolutely valid. But at the time when I was thinking I had to do these steps, I didn't actually cultivate a very strong relationship with my intuitive self. Does that make sense? So I was still very much in my head. And although I was intuitive, I didn't really exercise that muscle. I didn't really trust my intuitive self. So a lot of the doubts weren't really about animal communication per se. It was more about, did I receive that right? Did I hear that right? Can I trust myself to relay that information because it feels like it's such a powerful message? And so what am I really doubting? I was actually doubting my intuitive self. So just have a check, to have a little kind of think about what your relationship with your intuitive self is right here, right now. Do you live your life intuitively? Because when you do, animal communication, communicating with animals is all part and parcel of it. So I was kind of doing it back to front when I look back, which was I was trying to communicate with animals and then almost trying to be intuitive. And then the older, wiser me now realizes that the more I connect with my intuitive self, the more I exercise my intuitive senses. It is the strongest kind of muscle, I suppose, to help you with communicating with animals. Because when you trust your intuitive self, can you see how easy it is then when you receive communication from an animal that you don't doubt it as much? Now, I'm going to be honest with you. Again, we're human. We will always have doubt. So am I saying to you that with lots and lots and lots and lots of practice, you will get to a point where you are super confident, you will never have any doubt, it doesn't matter what the feedback is, you're going to be fine about it? No. I have been doing this, and I do it full time. Just before I come on to a Skype session or a video call session, to communicate with animal, I still have that tiny little voice. It's only tiny because I practice, I do it every day. So that's the only difference between myself and somebody who isn't practicing every day. I will still have the tiny little voice that goes, ooh, what if? So if you know that, and I'm telling you that that's the way it is, then I go back to my intuitive self. I trust my intuitive self. And the other thing that I'm not as concerned about now, as I was at the start of my animal communication journey, is about getting things wrong. And there's lots and lots of amazing information on, and I'm going to bring in about the Speak Good Human website, because that has actually motivated me recently to really help and handhold anyone who wants to practice animal communication, because it's such a great learning platform. I didn't know it existed when I started animal communication, but now that I know it exists, I want to share about it. But yeah, so living your life intuitively will really help your animal communication. So if you find that you're struggling with animal communication, it's actually the animals telling you that you need to get acquainted with your intuitive self. So that's what they did for me. They helped me with the fact that when I struggled in terms of being able to understand animal communication, I had to then kind of unravel it and go, oh, it's because my intuitive senses have not been exercised. So I was saying to you earlier about how I used to believe that I wasn't visual. Well, what do I need to do? I need to allow myself to exercise and practice my ability to receive intuitive images. Same with sound, smell, taste, sensations, emotions, thoughts, words, knowingness. Because guess what? We need all those senses when we're communicating with animals. And so we're not just relying on an animal giving us words. We're not just relying on the animals just giving us visual. Because animals will communicate with us through sound, smell, taste, sensation, emotions, thoughts, words, all of those senses combined. So you have all these senses that you can use. So then as you kind of, hopefully you're picking up some tips here, as you kind of realize that, it makes, I hope, your kind of motivation to want to sit with an animal far more exciting, far more fun, rather than, ooh, what if I get nothing? What if? Okay. So yeah, so giving and receiving, what are the things that block us? I think we've covered quite a lot of it, which is to do with the fear of getting it wrong. So there's two ways to overcome that. One is to cultivate a very good relationship with your intuitive self. And second is to cultivate a good relationship with the person who you're going to be communicating, with their animal for. So make sure that you explain to them the purpose of why you are practicing, and to explain to them their role that they play. Okay. And releasing, and once you have somebody is on your side, and that's what Isabel did for me. I still kind of worried in case I got things wrong, but I didn't worry about whether she would be dismissive, or she would laugh at me, or she would ignore me. I didn't have that, because I had somebody I knew I could trust, who would honor my learning journey. So that is key. And then, and part of that is when you know somebody is really on your side, you can release the fear of being rejected, the fear of being judged, the fear of being criticized. As adults, we find learning new things harder because of perhaps some, experience we had when we were younger, when we did things wrong, we were either laughed at or we were criticized. So if you embrace your blocks, is better than pushing your blocks aside. So there you are, you say to yourself, right, I'm going to practice with an animal, and then you find all these blocks come up, and you find yourself going, I haven't got time, I need time to, it's just not peaceful enough where I am. Just embrace. I remember once, and I didn't have a lot of space at the time when I was kind of learning animal communication. It was quite a cluttered life I had at the time. And I remember always thinking, well, until I have an office of my own, I used to say, until I have my own space with all my crystals around me, and a peaceful, room. I had all these kind of external things I needed to almost say, when that's perfect, then I'll practice. When I have exactly what I need on the external, then I'll be able to sit with the photograph of the animal. But actually, that was my fear of rejection, my fear of, fear of getting it wrong, that stopped me. So I put the criteria on external things. And then, and then I've discovered, what the best one of my best places to practice communicating with an animal was in my car, because I can drive myself off somewhere peaceful. I used to drive myself off to along the quayside, and I'm in control of who gets in my car. It's completely private, and I'll sit in my car and I'll look at the photograph, and I'll either audio record it, or I'll have my notepad and I'll write it down. So if I can do it in my car when I was practicing, so can you. So if you're looking for the perfect environment, there's a tip there for you. Now, the other big kind of component that really helped me was I also found a practice group that really suited for what I needed. I have to say, I looked for a lot of places. I joined a lot of groups to try and see if I can communicate with animals, but sometimes these groups were not very well managed. So sometimes I would offer, a reading and then don't get any feedback, and that would be quite, it would cause me to be kind of despondent. And then what happens is that if you don't have the momentum, you fall off on the wayside, and it's harder to pick it up. So find yourself a group that's going to just keep the momentum going. So that is, the thing that really helped me was I found this group. And, practicing animal communication really must not be done in isolation. Don't let yourself almost like keep it as a secret. Wanting to practice communication, wanting to communicate with animals needs to be declared, but obviously declared in the right place. But don't try and practice kind of privately, if that makes sense, because we feel a bit kind of like, well, I don't want anybody to know. It's kind of my own journey. I want to discover it myself. I'm actually saying to you, from what I've learned, and it's taken me maybe 3 or 4 years to realize that working in a group or working with one significant person or a combination of both is key to accelerating your learning. And find a group that you feel comfortable with. And this is where I'm going to come back now to the reason why I'm so I kind of suddenly got this kind of fire in my belly about, helping you to motivate you to practice, is because I discovered the website Speak Good Human. And I looked at the amount of information. I assume all of you would know about the Speak Good Human website because the webinar mentions about it. If not, I will put links of it in the event page. But it's such a fantastic learning platform. And I have a practice den on there. And I want to tell you that I can only speak about my practice den. This is how you are going to have the opportunity to really explore for yourself, knowing that all those blocks that you have will be, well, as much of your blocks in terms of the setup will be removed. So on my practice den, there are a selection of animals, and for the next 2 months, you will have very active participation from me. We will have a very active relationship when it comes to you practicing communicating with animals. Every single animal on my practice den, I have a relationship with their human, with the pet parent. And I have, in a sense, kind of interviewed them to make sure that they understand their role and that they are there to support you. They are there to give you the feedback that's going to be helpful to you. And I have asked for the feedback to initially be sent to me rather than direct to you, because I want to check, number one, that their feedback is useful. Because there's a couple of stages. So stage one, if you're if you've kind of not been practicing and you've got a lot of doubts, this is really key for you to know that you are honored and you are supported in your journey. And I will be doing that for you for the next 2 months. I'm only able to do it really for the next 2 months in this kind of level of activity. So go to my practice den and look for the animals that you are drawn to. Submit your communication, knowing that even if you submit one word or one sentence or a whole essay, it is fine, because the submission will go to somebody that I have a relationship with, and they will send me their feedback, and I will read their feedback and look at your communication, and then I will send it to you, and then you have the opportunity, if you have any questions that you have or any kind of clarification that you need, that you can liaise with me about that. The broader kind of questions that you have, there's also a section called Ask the Pros, which is a brilliant way of sharing your question, which means that if I was to answer that question, then we can share it with everyone who visits the site as well. Now, I just want to see if I'm clever enough with my technology to see if I can share it on my screen, what the website looks like. So bear with me. So I know that hopefully you can all see the screen with the website, and the address is, hang on, my thing up there is, there you go, www.talktoanimals.weebly.com. Okay, so you go to the practice den, and then if you scroll down, this is my practice den, Joanne Yeoh. Click on that. Bear with my signal, and you'll see this is my practice den. So you have other practice dens you can you can use as well, but I'll talk about mine. So these are all the animals. Okay, so got a nice selection. Got dogs, we got cats, we got guinea pigs, we got parrots, we have horses, and every single animal, I have asked their permission. They are keen. They are keen for you to communicate with them. There are living animals, there are animals in spirit. So these animals, I know. I don't mean I've communicated with all of them myself, but I know them because prior to submitting their details onto this site, I asked their permission. I check with them that they are happy with, why they are on the practice den, and I do exactly the same with their humans. So you can be rest assured that whichever animal you choose, you will be supported. Now, so the way it works is you click on the animal that you're drawn to, okay, and then it'll come up with some details, and you can do freestyle, you can answer the question. Now, what I want to say to you as well is don't be confined by the question, that's been set. If you want to do freestyle, if you just feel that you just want to get one emotion, one thought, one visual imagery, then you have this form that you can submit your communication to. Okay, so how simple is that? It's all been set up for you. You don't have to go around looking for animals to practice with. You've got a whole kind of plethora of animals waiting for you to do it. So I hope I'm getting you all excited to just do it with the knowledge that you will be supported. So this is what I call the stage one of your practice, where you are nurtured, where you have your hand held. It is so important, and that's what Isabel gave me. And then you have stage two. The stage two is whereby if you want to, and it's your journey that you choose, you will look for animals and the persons yourself, and you can create a portfolio for your case studies, and it can be a useful way of getting testimonials. So you're kind of semi-independent. So these stages are quite important. So the first stage, get your hand held, it's fine, but don't work in isolation. Second stage, you're working more independently. You're looking for the animals yourself. You're interviewing the person and having some boundaries set, some guidelines set, but don't do that in isolation. Continue either with a mentor or also continue working within a group setting. So if I could kind of turn the clock back a little bit for myself, I would have done less in isolation and did a lot of it kind of on my own, because it took me a while to really find a group that I really needed. And then I found that one group, but again, it became kind of less active, that group. So I was a little bit frustrated with that. So you need a group that is active. You need a group whereby it's managed well. You need a group whereby people aren't just popping pictures and photos of animals and then you never hear from them again. It's got to be very well run. So that's, so continue to work in group, continue to have a community of like-minded learners, and that's key. So now I'm aware I can ramble on forever, so I'm very conscious of the time. So I hope I've given you some tips amongst things that I've been saying, and that you feel less, what's the word I'm looking for, less reluctant, less resistant to, just communicate with the animal. And I sense that there's a few of you in this group that's probably saying something to me like, well, I would when I have more time, I've got kids, or I've got work, or I've got parents to look after, I've got animals to look after. I'm going to say something to you. Do it quick. Do a quick communication. Communications do not have to be lengthy. Again, this is from experience. When I started, I felt that I needed to give at least half an hour, in order to get into the zone to communicate with animals. Live intuitively, work your intuitive muscle, and then you can have very, very quick communications. Sit in your car for 5 minutes with a photograph of an animal and just say to yourself, right, what can I sense emotionally? What can I sense physically? What can I hear? Can I hear intuitive sound? Did I just get an intuitive imagery? Oh, did I get a smell? Oh my goodness, did I taste something? It doesn't have to be that formal. You can do quick communications. And I will welcome in my practice den that if you just put one word, one sentence, or a whole essay, I will honor your journey. Okay, so I'm going to stop talking now, I think. Right, I'm just going to stop the recording, and then I might just have a quick look at the chat box and see if I can